Serious, Redditors who were almost murdered, what's your story? I was working at a gas station. It was at night and slow, so I was sitting in the office watching TV. All of a sudden, one guy comes in behind me, another guy comes in front of me. Guy in front says, "Don't get up." I give him the wad of cash from my breast pocket, and then the money from my front pocket. They rush out back into the darkness. I stay put, just like the guy said. Then I call the owner. A car pulls up to get gas. I tell them they need to pay by credit card or exact change because I just got robbed. Then I reach up to touch my neck. It was bloody. The guy in back was holding a knife to my throat. Must have been a sharp knife not to feel it, or adrenaline. Yeah, I guess I missed a detail. Did they get caught? My favorite part of this is how you just went right back to working. Every cashier learns to just keep a stone face through every dumb joke and rude remark customers make. Like someone could strip naked and climb up on the counter to start dancing, trying for a viral YouTube reaction or something, and the clerk will not give two F's about anything but counting down the hours of his shift. You almost got your throat slit and slipped right back into routine because it didn't mean you were good to clock out, and therefore didn't mean crap, laughing my butt off. I ran into an armed robbery once and the whole thing blew my mind. It was a gas station near my apartment. I went almost nightly, and I had a good rapport with the workers. Usually I'd go through the drive-thru. I worked late, so think 3 a.m., and they had no problem grabbing me snacks. This day I had a friend/coworker with me, and we were going to watch some movies, have a few drinks, had no idea what we wanted, so we went in. I said hi to Ravi. I'm talking across the store, telling him about my night, asking about his kid's ear infection, browsing snacks. My friend needs to pee, so he chucks the bathroom key across the store at me. She hands me what she's got. I grab a few more things and plunk it on the counter. And I'm going on, and Ravi is telling me about stuff in this way. I ask, "Do you have a cold?" I look in his eyes and he's just white, sweating. His eyes shift and I look behind the counter and there's a dude with his back to the safe and a gun pointed at Ravi. Instant ice water. So my mouth keeps word vomiting about my night as he scans, and he tells me the total. In my possession, I have high bills in cash, and a card with $2.17 in the account. Because I deliberately don't carry my actual money bank card with me, in case of getting robbed. I pull out a $100 and he shakes his head. So I scan my card and it quickly tells me I've been declined. "Would you like your receipt?" says Ravi. "No, I'm good." My friend comes out and I snatch the key from her and hand it back. She also lives nearby and is like, "Ravi, how are you?" Ravi answers and offers to bag, and I decline and start shoving things in my friend's arms. She's baffled as to why I'm being so rude. It's Ravi, and then catches the security video monitor in the corner and says, "Well, I just started my period, so we have to go right now." "Sorry, Ravi, it's TMI." And we left. Drove away and called the cops. 2 days later, busy during the day, there's Ravi. And he just says, "Yeah, that kind of sucked. Guy left right after you guys and I was worried, so I called the cops to make sure he didn't follow you. I ended up staying until next shift at 9. Ravi, my dude, someone held you at gunpoint and robbed you. Lock up and go home." I was a clerk at an appliance repair shop. Some guy had brought his riding lawnmower in to be worked on, but decided it cost too much to have repaired, so my boss asked me to load it up in our lift truck and drive it to his address. I was 17 and had my relatively newly minted license on me, so it felt like a big responsibility and I was happy to do it. I loaded it up just fine and drove to his address. When I started to unload it, I noticed that the battery was unattached. One of the technicians must have removed it to work on it or something. Unfortunately, I had no tools to put it back in. I checked the work order and it said customer declined repair, needs replacement engine. So I thought, phew, he won't care because the engine is dead anyway. I rang the doorbell, and this fat drunk guy with no shirt opens the door suddenly. I had lowered the riding mower off the lift truck and had pushed it into his yard. He yells, "What the hell are you leaving that pile of junk in my yard for?" I said, "Is this not your riding lawnmower?" He says, "Hell yes, it's mine, but it's in pieces and I don't want the damned thing. What the F is wrong with you people?" So I apologize and ask him if he wanted me to load it back up. I didn't know what else to say. For some unknown reason this pissed him off even more, and he disappeared back in his house. I go back to the truck to radio my boss, this was back in the days before cell phones, to see what she wanted me to do. In the meantime, that drunk bastard stomps out onto his porch with a shotgun, leveled it at the truck, and pulled the trigger. The windshield shattered, and I literally couldn't hear anything but ringing from the noise. I jumped in the truck, started it up, put it in reverse and floored it out of his driveway, almost going into the ditch on the other side of the road. He fires again, this time hitting the passenger side of the truck near the door, blowing shrapnel into the cab of the truck, which hit my leg and cut me a bit. I flew back to work faster than I had ever driven before, called my mom and dad, and told my boss I was never coming back to work there again. The cops came and took my statement, arrested the dumbass, and I had to testify against him a few months later, despite desperately never wanting to see him again. He only spent about 6 months in prison for it. Luckily, by the time things were settled, I had moved away to college, and didn't have to worry about him anymore. Edit. I'm very surprised by how much my story took off. Someone suggested an app TLDR, TL, Dr. Drunk Guy tried to kill me because I dumped his lawnmower in his property. I will never understand why firing a gun at someone with lethal intent would put someone in prison for only 6 months. That is insane. His lawyers argued that it wasn't his intent to kill me, so he was found innocent on attempted murder, but guilty to some of the lesser charges. That's part of why it still torques off my mom. I can hear her voice right now. That damned bastard should have been in prison for the rest of his life, but those pencil-neck sons of bitches said he didn't intend to kill anybody. By God, if someone points a gun at someone and pulls the trigger, as far as I'm concerned, that's intent. Your mom is absolutely correct. As my sister says, don't point a gun at anything you're not willing to part with. I like this saying. It's one of the 4 rules for gun safety that people who actually know their crap will teach you before allowing you to handle a gun. Along with the gun is always loaded. It might not be, but you better not find out the hard way if you're wrong. Be sure of your target, edit, and what's beyond. Thanks guys, and keep your finger off the trigger unless you're actively about to shoot. That's a fun one to watch for in movies. Only a handful of actors treat their prop like a real gun. The rest are practically holding it by the trigger. Edit. Dang guys, if I knew this would be seen if I've actually looked up the right wording and linked the whole thing. Also, credit to my brother for drilling these rules into me. The first thing he did after our first firearm course, we were young teens, was to change the desktop background to the 4 gun safety rules. You couldn't get away from them, haha. Our Nerf gun safety immediately became rather strict. Web link. I've never liked be sure of your target because I feel like it does a piss poor job of conveying the intent behind the rule, which is, be aware of what is behind the target. Don't shoot at someone without being aware of what's behind them. Babies, an apartment wall, innocent bystanders. It's more about being aware of your environment, not just the target, as a large percentage of shots go beyond the target. Edit. This edit might make me a little controversial. I know that the PP edited to correct this rule with the full verbiage. But that's exactly my problem with the rule. It's just too easy to shorten the way it's phrased, and as such too easy to miss the core of it. Check comments below for people who are unfamiliar with guns, and people talking about being aware of more than just the background so Fred doesn't get shot. It should be aware of your environment. Emo. I got shot twice in the back while working in Africa. I'll condense the story as much as possible. There's a whole prelude to it that explains the why, but that's actually really hard for me to talk about. I flew helicopters in Africa for almost 6 years. Mainly for small, frontline NGOs serving rural populations in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, etc. Most of the work centered around OB/GYN care/HIV/AIDS treatment/prevention/infectious disease treatment/vaccination. East Africa isn't exactly green acres, and there are a lot of interesting characters/groups roaming the countryside. Militants, poachers, jihadis, oh my. They don't generally like being hassled by Westerners, especially when you fly with heavily armed security. We were in a small Kenyan village called Kiunga, on the Kenya/Somali border, when we were assaulted by a group of militants, likely Al-Shabaab. The Boni National Reserve was a common hideout for them, and there were active warnings in place to prevent tourists from venturing there to see animals. I got word that we were ready to head out, so I and my number 2 at the time started the pre-flight check. While we were in the process of starting the engines, a group of really nice young men rolled up in a Toyota Hilux and, in the glorious words of Frank Reynolds, started blasting. 2 rounds pierced the panel directly behind the cockpit of the Bell 412 we were flying that day and fragmented. 2 of the larger fragments blew through the back of the seat I was in, and the rest is history. Our security detail, to their immense credit, did exactly what they were paid, exceptionally well, to do, and those fine young men in that Hilux had a very, very bad day. The lead doc and one of the nurses yanked me out of the seat and stabilized me as best they could in the back. That meant a spritz of some serious pain meds, atomized fentanyl and ketamine right up the nose for the win, a clotting agent, Celox, and some serious pressure in the form of a German doctor named Fritz kneeling on my back. The wounds themselves weren't life-threatening, but they hurt like a mother. I've got 2 nice scars with some real clean suture work. The flight back to Mombasa was not fun. You definitely seem like the kind of person I'd like to sit next to at a bar. Tell me your life story. Ha ha. Ha. Where do I start? I've packed a lot of weird stuff into 40 years on this little rock. Well, of all the places to be when you get shot twice in the back, a helicopter full of doctors and heavily armed security is pretty good. Glad you survived. Holy F, my guy. I've told this before, but I witnessed a murder directly in front of me while I was sitting in my Jeep with the top down. 2 guys were arguing on the sidewalk. I was just sitting there. They knew I was there and didn't care. One guy pulled out a homemade shank from his pant leg and straight-armed it into the other guy's eye. I will never forget the crunching sound when that blade went into his face. The murderer looked at me once and bolted. I ran up to help, but the guy was effed. Blood spouting out of his eye in gushes, and he was moaning horribly. He died as the ambulance arrived. I was the only witness and nearly testified in court, but the guy pleaded guilty and got 15 to 25 years. Still have nightmares about that 25 years later. I saw a fatal car accident that effed me up pretty good. I sought out something called EMDR, which blurred the images in my brain a little bit so they aren't as graphic. It only took 1 session with a qualified therapist and definitely helps me sleep better. Just something to consider. No way. I've told that story 1,000 times and I've never heard of this. Thank you so much. EMDR helped my mom recover from a home invasion and kidnapping. EMDR helped me work through the childhood sexual abuse I suffered at the hands of my grandfather. Truly life-changing. Stick with it for more than 1 session if you can, as the benefits only increase with time. Just wanted to chime in and say that I've also had EMDR. It's an additional certification for a therapist, so you can Google to find ones near you who have current certifications. Or if you have a therapist currently, you can talk to them more about it. It's totally painless and just helps to reprogram your brain around whatever your trigger is. Mine was a toxic work environment that more or less gave me PTSD. Good luck. Therapist here. I'd highly recommend you seek out EMDR for this. I'd like to point out though that it can be difficult to process through the trauma and isn't always an easy fix. A good rule of thumb is that therapy is hard, and it's normal to feel worse right after a session. But it should feel like you just worked out really hard, not that you just worked out so hard you have to puke. It's progress. Sorry you've had to witness this and carry it for so many years. Holy hell. I'm sorry you had to see that, but kudos to you on your reaction to help. You're a good person. I posted this story before on another thread once. But here goes. When I was in high school, a random new kid started stalking me. Like following me home from school. I'd see him outside my house, he'd stand by my locker at school. He was weird. Told my counselor, but they didn't really believe me. Told a teacher I was close with, and he talked to the principal. They said they'd watch out. After about a week, my boyfriend was pissed the school wasn't helping me. He confronted this kid and they almost physically fought. Finally, he got kicked out of school, and about a month later, less than 3 miles from my house, he strangled a girl my age, who also went to my school, and dumped her body in a field. This makes me so mad. Why was no one helping you? Why did no one help that other girl? You'd be surprised at how little schools do anything in these kind of situations. For example, for all the anti-bullying promotions they do, they never take any bullying cases seriously and actually punish the victim if the victim ever fights back. This is partly what F's up a lot of bullying victims beyond the actual bullying. Like you grow into adulthood with that same conditioning that you're not allowed to fight back, and so bullying continues. Yeah, this was the worst part of bullying. I don't even really blame the bullies. They were probably dealing with their own crap too. What stung was the adults letting me down. We ended up kicking the living crap out of a bully during recess at my elementary school. A group of us were fed up that our faculty was humoring his behavior due to his anger management issues and the like. Turns out having your bells rung by a group of 8 or so kids is a good wake-up call. Didn't have a single issue with him after he was completely humiliated. Sometimes you really do have to fight fire with fire. When my mother came for a meeting with the principal, the entire group got punished. She said that she had told me to fight back if the faculty continued to turn a blind eye. This is the same kid that very purposefully broke my leg during a game of kickball and had tormented our entire grade for years prior. I still feel like I should have got a few more punches and kicks in. If you're out there, Brandon, F you, still. This is horrifying. My ex-stepfather is bipolar. After my mom left him, he had another manic episode. He broke in and pulled a gun on us. Told me to go to my room and not to call the police. I was 11. I called the police. When they pulled up, he shot through the door to my bedroom and emptied the clip. I had already grabbed my cat and was outside under the deck. I am just glad he shot the door and not my mom. My half-sister was born later that year. At her funeral he showed up and kept trying to talk to me. He couldn't understand why I refused. He was never charged and has no memory of the incident. He spent a weekend at a mental hospital and then was released to go to work. As a teacher, I don't understand how all this was ignored and he was considered an upstanding teacher and person. You were at your baby half-sister's funeral? Geez, just tragedy on top of tragedy. Domestic abuse is never taken seriously enough. No, she died much later. I didn't speak to him for 20 years and he is a butthole who should be dead instead. He had nothing to do with her death except set her up to normalize abuse. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.